Okay, so it's time for us to talk about the climate list as well. And Ingmar Rentzhog is a climate change expert, CEO and founder of We Don't Have Time, and joins me live via video link. Hi there, Ingmar.
Hello.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to us tonight here on Talk Radio. Firstly, what is We Don't Have Time?
We're a social network, the world's largest for climate action. So everything on our network is about solving the climate crisis and solutions. So we are actually a combination of Twitter and everything is for the climate. So become a member and start using our network and go to wedon'time.org. A little bit commercial.
I'm not cynical of climate change, Ingmar. I believe it exists. I'm not one of those people that is trying to dismiss the science. What I'm really cynical of is that governments and organisations that are trying to promote the green agenda, all too often, I feel it's an excuse to tax or try and reduce the freedoms of our citizens. How do you respond to someone like me who has those concerns?
I could understand it, and in some ways you could absolutely be right. But I mean, we still need to solve the climate crisis. I don't think the solution is to tax everything, but we have a problem, and that is it's free to pollute, and that is one part of how we could fix the problem is to actually put a price on the pollution. But I don't think the solution is to have the government to have higher the taxes and do whatever they like with that. Actually, there's a really good example of how you can do it in a way without having the government to use the money. And that is called cap and dividend. That is something Canada has been doing as one of the first countries in the world. And that means that you put a price on the emission, but the tax doesn't go to the government. It actually goes back to the people, so that those that are not emitting actually receives money, and those that are emitting are paying money. So it's more or less a redistribution of the income. But I don't believe that is the only solution. Actually, I read this report about 1% of the world's population actually emits as much as twice of half of the world's population. And many people sort of think that is something really bad. But I don't see it that way. I see it the other way. It's much easier to have 80 million people to change compared to 8 billion people. So if you're rich, congratulations, you can do so much. And what you do has a really, really big impact.
But then why do you think then, Ingmar? Because if it is 1% of the world's population that is creating so much of the climate crisis that we've got, and even if you don't believe in the climate crisis, by the way, I mean, who wouldn't think it's a nicer idea that we have slightly better air? Who wouldn't think it's a nicer idea that we produce less rubbish, or try and think about the waste that we all produce and getting rid of it in an environmentally friendly way? So I think there are benefits for everyone within this, whether you're a cynic or whether you're someone who's on board with the science. But if it is only 1% of people that are causing the most problem, or a big majority of problems, why is it so many of us who are just sort of hardworking, we're squeezed in the middle, we're trying to get by, we're trying to pay our taxes, we don't have much money to spend? Why are a lot of these climate initiatives all focusing on us?
No, I think it's wrong. We must focus on change the system. I mean, what you do doesn't matter if you're the only one that are doing it. But that's not an excuse to continue polluting the world. Yeah, everyone has their own responsibility to actually lower the emission. But the solution is to change the system. But the only way of doing the change is to inspire and influence others to follow. And here, what we see here today is a lot of big corporation leaders that actually start to act on the climate. And that's very, very good. But they are often, or they're forgetting themselves. So those big CEOs, they are doing a lot of great climate action for their businesses, but still they are really big polluters as a private individuals, and that will not have people follow their examples. We need leaders to look up to where we can follow. And if we don't have that, we are struggling in the dark. But because we need to change the system, it's never an excuse why you don't change yourself. Because the only thing you actually can change is yourself. Because
Yeah,
you're the
I
cost of
get
yourself.
that, but it's so difficult, Ingmar, to have faith to do something like that. For instance, and this is something I've spoken about a lot on this programme, but at the moment in London and across the UK in our major cities, there's a really big debate going on about something called low traffic neighbourhoods and what they're doing. And I don't know if you've seen any of the reports about this, but it's about trying to reduce car use. And the way they're doing that is closing most of the side roads in a lot of cities, trying to direct traffic onto main roads, whilst also making bus lanes 24 hours, meaning that now people who were taking journeys that were 5 or 6 minutes in their car, or maybe 10 minutes in their car, are stuck in traffic for 30, 40, 50 minutes at a time. And there are examples like that of seemingly logical steps that they take, or seemingly logical changes they expect us to make, but then those in charge come up with the most contradictory and absurd ideas, like trying to solve carbon emissions by creating traffic jams. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Or when you are told yourself that you must have a zero emissions vehicle or a hybrid, and then you see a council lorry going past that is pumping out emissions like it's right, left and centre. So how can we get it so that those people in charge actually carry out or suggest plans that aren't going to make us scratch our heads or say, well, why, or more importantly, say, why should we do that when you are not making my life easier, you're making it more difficult, you're contradicting yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, what we must stop doing is to blame each other. We can't blame the leaders, and the leaders can't blame us. What we need to do is have a dialogue and listen to each other, and figure out how we can do this in the best way, where we also do it in a way where we're not penalty people. We must listen to each other and solve this problem together. That's the only way forward. And I don't like this blaming thing, and it's actually going in both directions. The people are blaming the leaders, and the leaders are blaming the people. And that will get us nowhere.
Well, I'm much more, Ingmar, a fan of the carrot rather than the stick.
Yeah.
And I think you don't tax people or penalise people into being green. You incentivise them. I don't know why, and this is why, again, I have cynicism, Ingmar, because if governments have just spent here in the UK hundreds of millions of pounds trying to sort of bring in certain green agendas and closing streets and extending pavement and all these sorts of things that are frustrating a lot of people. Whereas if the government said, right, we're going to spend that £500 million and we're going to subsidise public transport for that, or from now on, all public transport will be capped at a certain amount, and the money, we will subsidise it to that point. Overnight here in the UK, people would use trains and other forms of transport that are more environmentally friendly within a second. So that is a brilliant incentive. Pay me to get rid of my polluting car. Incentivise me to not have a car at all as well. Pay me for getting rid of my car, and then give me a subsidy every month. But the conversation... Sorry, I'm giving you my list of policies, Ingmar, but the conversation is never framed like that. It is never about incentive. It is always about penalty.
Yeah, and I agree with you.
But how are we going to get people on board with being green?
What we need to do is to talk about the fossil fuel subsidies. Because if we take that away, we don't need to subsidize the renewable energy or the fossil-free world. We only need to take away those free subsidies for the fossil fuel industry. So it's not a penalty to take away a subsidies that we're paying today. So let's get rid of all those subsidies and focus on the solutions, and it will be much cheaper to do the right thing. But today it's cheaper to do the wrong thing, and it's mostly because of those absurd subsidies. The fossil fuel industry is given money from the government, and people don't know this actually.
Well, I mean, if the money wasn't given to them, I mean, I'm worried that would create much more expensive petrol for people who are trying to get places. But if they did that in conjunction with making public transport 10-20% of the price that it is at the moment. Here in the UK, if you want to get a train, if I decided, or if I needed to go and get a train later today to, or tomorrow it would be now, across the country for some business at the last minute, it would be cheaper for me to book a flight abroad. Way cheaper. And that doesn't make any sense.
I agree with you. And that is mostly because of the subsidies. But you're right, we just can't take them away because that will hurt a lot of people because they are like built into the system. So how we're going to solve it is that we must take away the subsidies and sponsor the greener alternatives, so we make them cheaper.
So the greener alternative, becomes almost a no-brainer because you're going to be paying. At the moment, it's way cheaper to take your car across the country. Finally, and this ties into a lot of what we've been discussing tonight, and a lot of what Extinction Rebellion and some of the other more extreme climate change organisations subscribe to, and that is the idea of capitalism being a big problem when it comes to climate change. So my question for you, Ingmar, is capitalism the cause of the problem, or is it the solution to the problem potentially?
It's both, I will say. If you're in a car and it's heading for a crash, the only way to avoid that car crash is to be inside the car and stop it. You can't stop the car and turn it around if you're not inside the car. And we have a capitalist world, and the only way to change it is to change it within. But the capitalist today is actually a big part of the problem, and we need to change capitalism. But if we do that, capitalists could work to actually be the solutions. If we put money to the solution, and if we make the right choices be the cheap choices and the wrong one be the very, very expensive choices. So I think both is the right answer.
The person that comes up with a way in which you could harvest, make a car run on something that is completely zero emissions that also doesn't have electricity. The person that comes up with a solution to the internal combustion engine. The person that comes up with goodness knows what else. But they are going to be gazillionaires when they come up with the most amazing biodegradable plastic bottle that will be gone within 3 weeks of it being used. All of those things are there for the taking, and all of that innovation could lead to a hell of a lot of money for those people. And again, I don't know why we're not. There seems to be, Ingmar, very much hand in hand with climate change activism, a sort of left-wing, more socialist, high-tax, anti-capitalist agenda. And I think that those two going hand in hand is a really big problem for getting people on board with some of the solutions.
I think we need to have people care about the environment, either if they're conservative or they're leftist. This is not a political, the problem needs to be solved, and we need to have the discussion about how to solve it. And I love this discussion you have here, because we need that discussion. We need many kind of people thinking about how to solve this. Not just have one solution. We don't have one solution to this problem. It's many solutions, and we must debate them and we must discuss them. And I'm very happy that you invited me to your show.
I really appreciate it. I really appreciate our chat. You're one of my favourite people talking about climate change I've ever spoken to, because it has been so often, and I'm sure you find this, as I said, it ends up being about we must tax people and we must stop people's freedoms, and actually that's fine, you might win the argument, but you're not actually going to change people's behaviour by, I think, talking to them like that. And I think that with more conversations where it's sort of about incentive rather than about penalty, I think we'll get more people on board. Ingmar, really good to talk to you, climate change expert, CEO and founder of We Don't Have Time. What do you make of that then? That was quite a reasoned idea about how we would deal with climate change, wasn't it? Would you be slightly more on board with that sort of agenda? from Ingmar, who was saying, look, we need to have those ideas on the table. We need to have the ideas on the table that capitalism might solve this. We need to stop this idea of taxing people and penalising people. We need to stop this idea of making people feel like their freedoms are being taken away. If we're going to try and make fuel more expensive, well, then we need to make sure that public transport is as cheap as chips, so that you and I, it becomes a no-brainer that we end up getting on the train. Don't know about you, but I really enjoyed that conversation. I thought we were getting some common sense there, which is really, really good.